Ender's Game, Chapter 9. Locke and Demosthenes. I didn't call you in here to waste time. How in the hell did the computer do that? I don't know. How could it pick up a picture of Ender's brother and put it into the graphics in this Fairyland routine? Chronograph. I wasn't there when it was programmed. All I know is that the computer's never taken anyone to this place before. Fairyland was strange enough, but this isn't Fairyland anymore. It's beyond the end of the world, and I know the names of the places. I just don't know what they mean. Fairyland was programmed in. It's mentioned in a few other places, but nothing talks about the end of the world. We don't have any experience with it. I don't like having the computer screw around with Ender's mind that way. Peter Wiggin is the most potent person in his life, except maybe his sister Valentine. And the mind game is designed to help shape them, help them find worlds they can be comfortable in. You don't get it, do you, Major Imbu? I don't want Ender being comfortable with the end of the world. Our business here is not to be comfortable with the end of the world. The end of the world in the game isn't necessarily the end of humanity in the Bugger Wars. It has a private meaning to Ender. Good. What meaning? I don't know, sir. I'm not the kid. Ask him. Major Imbu, I'm asking you. There could be 1,000 meanings. Try one. You've been isolating the boy. Maybe he's wishing for the end of this world, the battle school. Or maybe it's about the end of the world he grew up with as a little boy, his home, coming here. Or maybe it's his way of coping with having broken up so many other kids here. Andrew's a sensitive kid, you know, and he's done some pretty bad things to people's bodies. He might be wishing for the end of that world. Or none of the above. The mind game is a relationship between the child and the computer. Together they create stories. The stories are true in the sense that they reflect the reality of the child's life. That's all I know. And I'll tell you what I know, Major Imbu. That picture of Peter Wiggin was not one that could have been taken from our files here at the school. We have nothing on him, electronically or otherwise, since Ender came here, and that picture is more recent. It's only been a year and a half, sir. How much can the boy change? He's wearing his hair completely different now. His mouth has redone with orthodontia. I got a recent photograph from Landside and compared. The only way the computer here in the battle school could have got that picture was by requisitioning it from a Landside computer, and not even one connected with the IF. That takes requisitionary powers. We can't just go into Guilford County, North Carolina, and pluck a picture out of school files. Did anyone at this school authorize getting this? I don't understand, sir. Our battle school computer is only a part of the IF network. If we want a picture, we have to get a requisition. But if the mind game program determines that the picture is necessary, it can just go take it. Not just every day. Only when it's for the child's own good. Okay, it's for his good, but why? His brother is dangerous. His brother was rejected from this program because he's one of the most ruthless and unreliable human beings we've laid hands on. Why is he so important to Ender? Why, after all this time? Honestly, sir, I don't know. And the mind game program is designed so that it can't tell us. It may not know itself actually. This is uncharted territory. You mean the computer's making this up as it goes along? You might put it that way. Well, that does make me feel a little better. I thought I was the only one. Valentine celebrated Ender's 8th birthday alone, in the wooded backyard of their new home in Greensboro. She scraped a patch of ground bare of pine needles and leaves, and there scratched his name in the dirt with a twig. Then she made a small teepee of twigs and needles and lit a small fire. It made smoke that interwove with the branches and needles of the pine overhead. All the way into space, she said silently. All the way to the battle school. No letters had ever come, and as far as she knew, their own letters had never reached him. When he first was taken, Mother and Father sat at the table and keyed in long letters to him every day. Soon, though, it was once a week, and when no answers came, once a month. Now it had been 2 years since he went, and there were no letters, none at all, and no remembrance on his birthday. He is dead, she thought bitterly, because we have forgotten him. But Valentine had not forgotten him. She did not let her parents know, and above all never hinted to Peter how often she thought about Ender, how often she wrote him letters that she knew he would not answer. And when Mother and Father had announced to them that they were leaving the city to move to North Carolina, of all places, Valentine knew that they never expected to see Ender again. They were leaving the only place where he knew to find them. How would Ender find them here, among these trees, under this changeable and heavy sky? He had lived deep in corridors all his life, and if he was still in the battle school, there was less of nature there. What would he make of this? Valentine knew why they had moved. It was for Peter, so that living among trees and small animals, so that nature, in as raw a form as Mother and Father could conceive of it, might have a softening influence on their strange and frightening son. And, in a way, it had. Peter took to it right away. Long walks out in the open, cutting through woods and out into the open country, going sometimes for a whole day with only a sandwich or two, sharing space with his desk and the pack on his back, with only a small pocket knife in his pocket. But Valentine knew. She had seen a squirrel half skinned, spiked by its little hands and feet with twigs pushed into the dirt. She pictured Peter trapping it, staking it, then carefully parting and peeling back the skin without breaking into the abdomen, watching the muscles twist and ripple. How long had it taken the squirrel to die? And all the while Peter had been sat nearby, leaning against the tree where perhaps the squirrel had nested, playing with his desk while the squirrel's life seeped away. At first she was horrified and nearly threw up at dinner, watching how Peter ate so vigorously, talked so cheerfully. But later she thought about it and realized that perhaps for Peter it was a kind of magic, like her little fires, a sacrifice that somehow stilled the dark gods that hunted for his soul. Better to torture squirrels and other children. Peter had always been a husbandman of pain, planting it, nurturing it, devouring it greedily when it was ripe. Better he should take it in these small, sharp doses than with dull cruelty to children in the school. A model student, said his teachers. I wish we had 100 others in the school just like him. Studies all the time, turns in all his work on time. He loves to learn. But Valentine knew it was a fraud. Peter loved to learn all right, but the teachers hadn't taught him anything ever. He did his learning through his desk at home, tapping into libraries and databases, studying and thinking, and above all, talking to Valentine. Yet at school he acted as though he were excited about the puerile lesson of the day. Oh, wow, I never knew that frogs looked like this inside, he'd say, and then at home he studied the binding of cells into organisms through the phylotic collation of DNA. Peter was a master of flattery, and all his teachers bought it. Still, it was good. Peter never fought anymore, never bullied, got along well with everybody. It was a new Peter. Everybody believed it. Mother and Father said it so often it made Valentine want to scream at them. It wasn't a new Peter. It was the old Peter, only smarter. How smart. Smarter than you, Father. Smarter than you, Mother. Smarter than anybody you ever met. But not smarter than me. I've been deciding, said Peter, whether to kill you or what. Valentine leaned against the trunk of the pine tree, her little fire a few smoldering ashes. I love you too, Peter. It would be so easy. You always make these stupid little fires. It's just a matter of knocking you out and burning you up. You're such a firebug. I've been thinking of castrating you in your sleep. No, you haven't. You only think of things like that when I'm with you. I bring out the best in you. No, Valentine. I've decided not to kill you. I've decided that you're going to help me. I am. A few years ago, Valentine would have been terrified at Peter's threats. Now, though, she was not so afraid. Not that she doubted that he was capable of killing her. She couldn't think of anything so terrible that she didn't believe Peter might do. She also knew, though, that Peter was not insane, not in the sense that he wasn't in control of himself. He was in better control of himself than anyone she knew, except perhaps herself. Peter could delay any desire as long as he needed to. He could conceal any emotion, and so Valentine knew that he would never hurt her in a fit of rage. He would only do it if the advantages outweighed the risks, and they did not. In a way, she actually preferred Peter to other people because of this. He always acted out of intelligence, self-interest. And so, to keep herself safe, all she had to do was make sure it was more in Peter's interest to keep her alive than to have her dead. Valentine, things are coming to a head. I've been tracking troop movements in Russia. What are we talking about? The world, Val. You know Russia, big empire, the Second Warsaw Pact, rulers of Eurasia from the Netherlands to Pakistan. They don't publish their troop movements, Peter. Of course not, but they do publish their passenger and freight train schedules. I've had my desk analyzing those schedules and figuring out when the secret troop trains are moving over the same tracks. Done it backward over the past 3 years. The last 6 months, they've stepped up. They're getting ready for war. Land war. But what about the League? What about the buggers? Valentine didn't know what Peter was getting at, but he often launched discussions like this, practical discussions of world events. He used her to test his ideas, to refine them. In the process, she also refined her own thinking. She found that while she rarely agreed with Peter about what the world ought to be, they rarely disagreed about what the world actually was. They had become quite deft at sifting accurate information out of the stories of the hopeless, ignorant, gullible news writers. The news herd, as Peter called them. The Pole March is Russian, isn't he? And he knows what's happening with the fleet. Either they've found out the buggers aren't a threat after all, or we're about to have a big battle. One way or another, the bugger war is about to be over. They're getting ready for after the war. If they're moving troops, it must be under the direction of the strategos. It's all internal, within the Warsaw Pact. This was troubling. The facade of peace and cooperation had been undisturbed almost since the bugger wars began. What Peter had detected was a fundamental shift in the world order. She had a mental picture as clear as a memory of the way the world had been before the buggers forced peace upon them. So it's back to the way it was before. A few changes. The shields make it so nobody bothers with nuclear weapons anymore. We have to kill each other thousands at a time instead of millions. Peter grinned. Val, it was bound to happen. Right now, there's a vast international fleet and army in existence with North American hegemony. When the bugger wars are over, all that power will vanish because it's all built on fear of the buggers. And suddenly, we'll look around and discover that all the old alliances are gone, dead and gone except one, the Warsaw Pact. And it'll be the dollar against 5 million lasers. We'll have the asteroid belt, but they'll have Earth. And you run out of raisins and celery kind of fast out there without Earth. What disturbed Valentine most of all was that Peter did not seem at all worried. Peter, why do I get the idea that you're thinking of this as a golden opportunity for Peter Wiggin? For both of us, Val. Peter, you're 12 years old. I'm 10. They have a word for people our age. They call us children, and they treat us like mice. But we don't think like other children, do we, Val? We don't talk like other children, and above all, we don't write like other children. For a discussion that began with death threats, Peter, we've strayed from the topic, I think. Still, Valentine found herself getting excited. Writing was something Val did better than Peter. They both knew it. Peter had even named it once. When he said that they could always see what other people hated most about themselves and bully them, while Val could always see what other people liked best about themselves and flatter them. It was a cynical way of putting it, but it was true. Valentine could persuade other people to her point of view. she could convince them that they wanted what she wanted them to do. Peter, on the other hand, could only make them fear what he wanted them to fear. When he first pointed this out to Val, she resented it. She had wanted to believe she was good at persuading people because she was right, not because she was clever. But no matter how much she told herself that she didn't even want to exploit people that way, Peter did. She enjoyed knowing she could, in her way, control other people, and not just control what they did. She could control in a way what they wanted to do. She was ashamed that she took pleasure in this power, and yet she found herself using it sometimes to get teachers to do what she wanted, and other students to get mother and father to see things her way. Sometimes she was able to persuade even Peter. That was the most frightening thing of all, that she could understand Peter well enough, could empathize with him enough to get inside him that way. There was more Peter in her than she would bear to admit, though sometimes she dared to think about it anyway. This is what she thought as Peter spoke. You dream of power, Peter, but in my own way, I am more powerful than you. I've been studying history, Peter said. I've been learning things about patterns in human behavior. There are times when the world is rearranging itself, and times like that, the right words can change the world. Think what Pericles did in Athens and Demosthenes. Yes, they managed to wreck Athens twice. Pericles, yes, but Demosthenes was right about Philip. Or provoked him. See, this is what historians usually do, quibble about cause and effect. When the point is, there are times when the world is in flux, and the right voice in the right place can move the world. Thomas Paine and Ben Franklin, for instance, Bismarck, Lenin. Not exactly parallel cases, Peter. Now she was disagreeing with him out of habit. She saw that he was getting at, and she thought it might just be possible. I didn't expect you to understand. You still believe that teachers know something worth learning. I understand more than you think, Peter. So you see yourself as Bismarck? I see myself as knowing how to insert ideas into the public mind. Haven't you ever thought of a phrase, Val, a clever thing to say and said it, and then 2 weeks or a month later you hear some adult saying it to another adult, both of them strangers, or you see it on a video or pick it up on a net? I always figured I heard it before and only thought I was making it up. You were wrong. There are maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people in the world as smart as us, little sister. Most of them are making a living somewhere, teaching the poor bastards or doing research. Precious few of them are actually in positions of power. I guess we're the lucky few. Funny as a one-legged rabbit, Val. Of which there are no doubt several in these woods. Hopping in neat little circles. Valentine laughed at the gruesome image and hated herself for thinking it was funny. Val, we can say the words that everyone else will be saying 2 weeks later. We can do that. We don't have to wait until we're grown up and safely put away in some career. Peter, you're 12. Not on the nets, I'm not. On the nets, I can name myself anything I want, and so can you. On the nets, we are clearly identified as students, and we can't even get into the real discussions except in audience mode, which means we can't say anything anyway. I have a plan. You always do. She pretended nonchalance, but she listened eagerly. We can get on the nets as full-fledged adults, with whatever net names we want to adopt, if Father gets us into his citizens' access. And why would he do that? We already have student access. What do you tell him? I need citizens' access so I can take over the world? No, Val, I won't tell him anything. You'll tell him how you're worried about me, how I'm trying so very hard to do well at school, but you know it's been driving me nuts because I never even talk to anybody intelligent. Everybody always talks down to me because I'm young. I never get to converse with my peers. You can prove that the stress is getting to me. There's even evidence. Valentine thought of the corpse of the squirrel in the woods and realized that even that discovery was part of Peter's plan, or at least he had made it part of his plan after it happened. So you get him to authorize us to share that citizens' access, to adopt our own identities there, to conceal who we are so people will give us the intellectual respect we deserve. Valentine could challenge him on ideas, but never on things like this. She could not say, "What makes you think you deserve respect?" She had read about Adolf Hitler. She wondered what he was like at the age of 12. Not this smart, not like Peter that way. He was like at the age of. She wondered what he was like at the age of 12. Not this smart, not like Peter that way, but craving honor, probably that. And what would have meant to the world if in childhood he had been caught in a thresher or trampled by a horse? Val, Peter said, I know what you think of me. I'm not a nice person, you think. Valentine threw a pine needle at him. An arrow through your heart. I've been planning to come talk to you for a long time, but I keep being afraid. She put a pine needle in her mouth and blew it at him. It dropped almost straight down. Another failed launch. Why was he pretending to be weak? Val, I thought I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, that you wouldn't believe I could do it. Peter, I was afraid. I believe you could do anything, and probably will. But I was even more afraid that you'd believe me and try to stop me. Come on. Threaten to kill me again, Peter. Did he actually believe she could be fooled by his nice and humble kid act? So I've got a sick sense of humor. I'm sorry. You know I was teasing. I need your help. You're just what the world needs. A 12-year-old to solve all our problems. It's not my fault I'm 12 right now, and it's not my fault that right now is when the opportunity is open. Right now is the time when I can shape events. The world is always a democracy in times of flux, and the man with the best voice will win. Everybody thinks Hitler got to power because of his armies, because they were willing to kill, and that's partly true, because in the real world, power is always built on the threat of death and dishonor. But mostly, he got to power on words, on the right words at the right time. I was just thinking of comparing you to him. I don't hate Jews, Val. I don't want to destroy anybody, and I don't want war either. I want the world to hold together. Is that so bad? I don't want us to go back to the old way. Have you read about the world wars? Yes. We can go back to that again, or worse. We could find ourselves locked into the Warsaw Pact. Now there's a cheerful thought. Peter, we're children. Don't you understand that? We're going to school. We're growing up. But even as she resisted, she wanted him to persuade her. She had wanted him to persuade her from the beginning. But Peter didn't know that he had already won. If I believe that, if I accept that I got to sit back and watch while all the opportunities vanish, and then when I'm old enough, it's too late. Val, listen to me. I know how you feel about me. You always have. I was a vicious, nasty brother. I was cruel to you and crueler to Ender before they took him. But I didn't hate you. I loved you both. I just had to have control. Do you understand that? It's the most important thing to me. It's my greatest gift. I can see where the weak points are. I can see how to get in and use them. I just see those things without even trying. I could become a businessman and run some big corporation. I'd scramble and maneuver until I was at the top of everything. And what would I have? Nothing. I'm going to rule, Val. I'm going to have control of something. But I want it to be something worth ruling. I want to accomplish something worthwhile. A Pax Americana through the whole world. So that when somebody else comes, after we beat the buggers, when somebody else comes here to defeat us, they'll find we've already spread over 1,000 worlds. We're at peace with ourselves and impossible to destroy. Do you understand? I want to save mankind from self-destruction. She had never seen him speak with such sincerity, with no hint of mockery, no trace of a lie in his voice. He was getting better at this. Or maybe he was actually touching on the truth. So a 12-year-old boy and his kid sister are going to save the world? How old was Alexander? I'm not going to do it overnight. I'm just getting to start now. If you'll help me. I don't believe what you did to those squirrels was part of an act. I think you did it because you loved to do it. Suddenly Peter wept into his hands. Val assumed that he was pretending, but then she wondered. It was possible, wasn't it? That he loved her, and that in this time of terrifying opportunity he was willing to weaken himself before her in order to win her love. He's manipulating me, she thought, but that doesn't mean he isn't sincere. His cheeks were wet when he took his hands away, his eyes rimmed in red. I know, he said. It's what I'm most afraid of, that I really am a monster. I don't want to be a killer, but I just can't help it. She had never seen him show such weakness. You're so clever, Peter. You saved your weakness so you could use it to move me now. And yet, did it move her? Because if it were true, even partly true, then Peter was not a monster. And so she could satisfy even her Peter-like love of power without fear of becoming monstrous herself. She knew that Peter was calculating even now, but she believed that under the calculations he was telling the truth. It had been hidden layers deep, but he had probed her until he found her trust. Val, if you don't believe me, I don't know what I'll become. But if you're there, my partner in everything, you can keep me from becoming like that, like the bad ones. She nodded. You are only pretending to share power with me, she thought. But in fact, I have power over you, even though you don't know it. I will. I'll help you.